Welcome to this Skill Builder presentation on critical analysis. This presentation is intended to help you develop your writing techniques so that your academic submissions become more critical and analytical in style. This involves our learning to recognize the features of our source materials that we consider to be descriptive, and learning how to move towards developing an approach that is more essentially critical of the resources with which we are working. Let's begin by clarifying the key terms that we'll be using during the presentation. When we use the term critical, we're describing a judgment that we make about specific sources. The word analytical, in this sense, is used to refer to the process of breaking information down into its constituent parts and providing a rationale as to why the material is presented in this way. So, why be critical? Well, any institution of higher education expects you, the student, to develop a critical approach to the sources that you use in your studies. This helps you to become a more effective student, always raising questions about the materials you use and the way that arguments and perspectives that are being presented have been constructed in a particular format. Of course, the process of becoming a more critically analytical student is one that takes time and practice, but it is something that all students need to develop if they are to excel in the environment of higher education. The good news is that critical analysis is a transferrable skill, one that you can use in many situations, not only in your studies, but in wider applications across your life in general. So let's think about what it means to be critical. Our relationship with the word critical tends to be somewhat problematic. We usually see the term in its negative form and consider it something to be avoided. But being critical is really about developing a healthy skepticism about the source materials that we use. In the sense that the term critical means finding the weaknesses in an argument or undermining a narrow perspective, then its use in academia is wholly understandable. That's how academic inquiry makes progress, by analysing theories and making suggestions of how studies might be improved. But remember, the term critical can also be used in a positive way. When a film is described as unmissable or a theatre production as sensational, these terms are a positive reflection of the critic's response. Let's look at some of the aspects we need to consider when we're trying to be more critical and analytical. Firstly, we want to know who has produced the source material. We also want to know about the claims that an author is making. We need to be mindful about where the research has been carried out. This can have a major influence on any findings. All research needs to be considered within its historical context. Research that appeared to be effective in the 20th century may not be transferable to the digital age 20 years later. We need to ask ourselves why the source material has been produced. What is the justification for the research? And finally, we should consider the methodology that has been used to generate the findings of any research. We can take our own approach to writing as a starting point for our critical analysis. Take a blank sheet of paper and write the numbers 1 to 6 in separate lines in the left-hand margin. You might leave a blank line between each one. You should then draw a line of 5 or 6 centimeters long next to each number so that your paper eventually looks something like this, with 6 lines of the same length, one next to each number. I'm going to read a series of strategies for you, 2 for each of the 6 numbers, and you should mark on your line with an X the position that best represents your approach to writing. Don't overthink it. The main aim is to get a brief overview of how you might approach your academic writing. For example, here we have in strategy 1, listing information in any order, while strategy 2 might be listing information in order of importance. So if you tend to list information in any order, your cross will fall somewhere on the line to the left, like so. As I read through each of the options, place a cross on the line that best describes how you approach your own writing. So strategy 1, stating what happened, and strategy 2 would be identifying the significance of what happened. So you put a cross on the line depending on which side you fall on between strategy 1 and 2. Strategy 1 in number 2 would be noting the method used, while strategy 2 would be indicating whether or not the method is suitable. Put your cross on the line. Number 3 is listing details in your writing. The second strategy would be evaluating the significance of details. Again, add your cross to the line. Number 4 is stating the links between items or showing the relevance of links between those items. Put your cross on the line. Number 5, strategy 1 would be stating when something happened, and strategy 2 would be identifying why timing is important. Again, add your cross. And finally, number 6 is stating options available or evaluating the options and stating which should be selected. Put your cross on the line that best represents your strategy. So, what does this exercise tell us? The options on the left of the line are basically more descriptive strategies, whilst those on the right are more closely associated with a critically analytical approach. The critically analytical options require us to make a judgment about our sources of information. Students who are thinking critically are always raising questions about their source materials. However, each criticism made against a source should be supported with evidence. It's not enough to say we don't agree with an author's position, we must say why we disagree and what that implies about the research, both of the source material and of our own. So the aim of the exercise is to help us identify how we work with our source materials at present and how we can develop strategies to help us become more critical of our sources and our own writing so that we move our crosses from the left of the line over to the right. There are many ways to do this, and you can decide on the strategy that best suits your own style and needs. But let's look here at some general examples. So in order to move from strategy 1 towards strategy 2, the next time when you're talking about significance, you might say, why is what happened important or relevant in terms of the argument, particularly in terms of answering your essay question? When you're thinking about methodology, you could talk about what could be improved in the methodological process, what should be questioned. When you're listing details, if you evaluate the details, you could say what the details tell us, or what don't they tell us? Linking items together, why should items be linked show us the relevance of putting the materials in the order that you've presented them. When we think about the historical timing, you can say why the historical location of the research is significant, how it might have been different in a different place and a different time. And finally, when you're looking at the options available, you have to make a judgment towards your conclusion about which options should be selected. And that will help you move from strategy 1 over towards strategy 2, which is more critically analytical. I hope this presentation has provided you with some useful strategies of how to develop a more critical and analytical style in your writing. If you want to discuss more about using critical analysis in your work, you can book a one-to-one appointment with an SAS advisor by visiting our homepage or by using the link on the next slide. You can also contact us by emailing sas@kent.ac.uk. Alternatively, call in at our reception. We're just near security and transport. There are some practical examples of critical language which you can use in your writing available here at Phrasebank. And if you want to learn more about critical thinking and analysis, you can access the SAS study guides via this link. You can also use this same link to book a one-to-one appointment with one of the SAS team.